Hi Little Chefs, I'm Macy, your registered dietitian. Welcome to our November class, Gather and Make. Today we are going to be making a cozy and delicious recipe for peanut butter apple oatmeal muffins. They are perfect for the season and filled with flavor. They're great for snacking or for a quick breakfast on the go. So let's go ahead and get started. To start out today, we are going to wash our hands and preheat our oven to 375 degrees, and then grab everything that we need for the first step of this recipe, which is a muffin tin and some muffin liners, or if you don't have any muffin liners, you can grab some butter or non-stick cooking spray. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started on our first step. So we are going to fill our muffin tin, each slot with a muffin liner. And again, if you do not have any muffin liners, that's totally okay. You can go ahead and instead of following this step, grease each slot with either your nonstick spray or your butter. So if you do have muffin liners, then you can go ahead and fill each spot with a liner. And then once we have all of our liners placed in, then we can go ahead and move to our next step, which is going to be to peel and dice our apples. So go ahead and wash your apples under some running water, and then we will meet back here for the next step. I have set my muffin tin aside. I went ahead and washed my apples, and I also grabbed out an extra bowl for our apple peels, a peeler, and a 1 cup measuring cup, because that is how much diced apples we are going to need today. So with this step, we are going to be using our apple peeler to peel our apples, and then we will be going into dicing them. So make sure that you have the help of an adult for this step. So I think the best and easiest way to peel an apple is to start by making a ring around the top. So very slowly, you can make a ring, drop that peel down, and then do the same for the bottom of the apple. Slowly turning it. And then from there, we can go ahead and just peel the apple. So making long strokes down the side to peel away that skin. All right, and then once you have made it all the way around your apple, then we are going to do the next step with our second apple. Alrighty, so we have our second apple done. So I'm going to go ahead and set this aside, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab a knife so we can begin dicing our apples. So again, for this step, continue to use the help of an adult as we cut our apples. So to dice, we are going to start by cutting off 4 lobes of our apples. So we'll start with one side, cutting straight down, and then we can just work our way around the apple. And then we are left with our core, so we can just toss that away. And then I'm going to do the same with my second apple. So for this next step, we are wanting to cut our apple into smaller pieces like this. And so to do that, we are going to grab our knife, a slice of apple, and we are going to place it the flat side down on the cutting board like this. And then again, still using the help of an adult, we are going to cut this into smaller pieces. So start by cutting off strips and just cutting all the way across the apple. We are going to use what we call a claw grip to keep our fingers away from the knife. So we are going to keep them like this as we cut. So go ahead and cut pretty thin slices all the way across. And then from there, we are going to cut these into smaller pieces. So if it's a little easier, you can work on this in sections. So pulling these aside, and then we are going to cut them the other way into smaller pieces. So again, working our way across apple, keeping our finger away from the knife, and then we are going to add it to the rest of our apples until we have 1 cup. So you can continue to do this with the rest of the apples. and then we will move on to our next step of the recipe. For our next step, we are going to need oats, baking powder, cinnamon, and some salt. And then I also grabbed out a mixing bowl, our mixing utensils, and a spatula or mixing spoon. So go ahead and pause here and grab out everything you need for this next step, and then we will go ahead and get started. So we will start with measuring out our 2 cups of oats. So measuring over the bowl, we're going to fill up our 1 cup. And pour that in. It's 1. And 2. And then next up, we need 1 teaspoon of baking powder. So just making sure it's nice and level. Do our 1 teaspoon and pour that in. And then we need 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. So we have 1 and 2. And then our last ingredient is our salt, which we need 1/2 teaspoon of. So be careful measuring over our bowl. And add that in as well. And then next we're going to mix this all together. So give it a good mix. All right, so once this is all combined, then we are going to set all of this aside and we are going to move to our next step of cracking our eggs. So go ahead and grab out 2 eggs and a separate bowl. You can actually grab 2 bowls, one for the shells and one for the eggs, and we will move on to that step. So we can go ahead with cracking our eggs. We'll start with our first one. We are just going to hit it across a flat surface until a crack appears. And then we can put our finger where the crack is, pull apart to drop our egg. And then we can toss our eggshells there so we can throw them away later. And what's helpful about cracking it into a separate bowl is if you accidentally drop any eggshells in there, we can go ahead and snake them out so it doesn't look like we got any here. Then we'll do one more, same thing. Gently pull apart. And that's all there is to that. So anytime we're working with raw eggs, we want to make sure that we wash our hands afterwards. So go ahead, pause here and wash your hands. Our next step is to mix together our liquid ingredients. So I still have out our eggs, maple syrup, milk, and vanilla. So we can start out by dumping our eggs into a larger bowl. And we are going to give those a good whisk. There we go. And then next we are going to measure out our milk. So anytime that we are measuring liquids, we want to use a liquid measuring cup, and we want to make sure that we are getting down eye level to the line when we are measuring. So I'm going to do that now, and we are going to measure out 1.5 cups. Our 1.5, and then we can go ahead and pour that in to our bowl. And then we will need 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Again, measure over our bowl in case we spill any. And 1/4 cup of maple syrup. Great. And then we can give all of these ingredients a good mix. Whisk. And And then we are going to keep this bowl out, and next we are going to grab out our peanut butter and our apple, and we'll move on to our next step by adding those to this bowl. All right, so for our next step, again, we are going to measure out our peanut butter and add our apples. So we are going to need 3/4 cup of peanut butter. So if you would like, you can use a measuring cup. But if you have a scale, this is a trick that I like to use to make cleanup a little bit easier. I know it can always be a little difficult to clean peanut butter out of a measuring cup. So the way that we do this is we can measure how many grams we need and do the conversion. So we know that there are 12 tablespoons in 3/4 of a cup. And since there are 2 tablespoons in each of these servings of 32 grams, we can do 32 times 6, which equals 192 grams. So we can just go ahead and measure that out. So I just turn on my scale, I tear it out, and we can go ahead and just scoop our 192 grams of peanut butter. So I have some parchment paper laid out here, again, for easy cleanup. And I'm just scooping until I hit 192. And there we go, we're close enough. And I'm just going to plop that into the mixing bowl. And then we can just toss this away. So from there, we are going to mix up our peanut butter as much as we can. It can be a little difficult, but whisk that up. It's not going to be completely smooth. And I love peanut butter because they are made from peanuts, and peanuts are actually the nut which has the most protein out of any nut. So protein helps us keep our muscles strong so we can run and play all day, whether you're at school or at home outside or playing sports. So there we go, we have that all mixed up, and then we are going to add our apples. And then give that a good mix as well. All right, and so I'm going to set this aside, or keep it here, but just set it over to the side here, and then I'm going to grab the dry ingredients that we measured out earlier, and we are going to meet back here for our next step. Now we are going to add our wet ingredients to our dry ingredients, so we can go ahead and just dump that in. And then we are going to mix this up. All right, looking beautiful. So I'm going to go grab out our muffin tin that we prepared earlier, and we're going to fill that up with our mixture. So you can go ahead and pause here to do that. Now let's go ahead and fill up our muffin liners. I'm going to use a 1/4 measuring cup. You can use a cookie scoop or just use a spoon. So just fill each one to the top. All right, and that's all there is to that step. I'm going to pop these into the oven for 30 to 40 minutes and bake them until they are browned, and then we will pull them out of the oven and we get to do the fun step of trying them. So go ahead and do that now. Great job today, little chefs. Our muffins are out of the oven and smelling great. So it is time to go ahead and enjoy all of our hard work. And I have included 2 additional recipes in the setup guide that you can go ahead and make now if you're feeling ambitious, or for a later time. They're super simple and tasty snacks to make for the fall season. And a special thank you to our sponsor, the National Peanut Board. They have made this class possible and provided us with these delicious recipes today. So thank you again for joining me today, and I hope to see you next time.